success. This year we had that's interesting. I guess I'm done. The decisions on this are recommended by a panel of experts that includes the different doing the work. So it's a feather in your cap to if you have a colleague you think produce a good paper, please. So, that, any questions?
So very thought-provoking and interesting talk. Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you very much for a very interesting talk. I'd like for you if you could share with us your opinion of online social networks and how now people are the instrument of their own demise by divulgating all sorts of information about themselves.
I feel like I'm the wrong generation to talk. Well, sorry,
Okay,
we're done.
but how would the social contract work now? Because we have different audiences. You have the organization that hosts your account, but also you have the people who you're interacting with, and the privacy can be violated at different levels. So,
it's a phenomenon that I feel not qualified to judge very much. I don't participate in it a great deal. It always seemed to me that as soon as I give the information to Facebook, I've given it, Facebook can do a lot with that information, and I'm trusting them to enforce that it only goes to my friends or whatever it is, and that's difficult as well.
Obviously, you read the terms of use.
That is my recommendation. I teach a course on that stuff, and then one of the things that I make the students do is read the terms of use for one of the social network sites on which they're members, and then they're shocked because they have no idea what they're agreeing to.
But yet it's extremely popular.
It is, but they don't know what they're agreeing to. I have never asked them whether they left the social network site on the basis of what they read.
I think the phenomenon reflects, people are social animals and they want to communicate. And certainly, I'm probably more involved in the creation of the internet and the original rationale on the commercial, in one respect, there are relative respects, for the internet was resource share. We were going to share computer systems here and there because computers were expensive and distributed. But of course, the real application that took off was email, which was a social thing, not just social, but that's where it went. So people have this need to communicate. The question is how much privacy they'll give up. It's interesting when you think about it. People will tell things to their friends, obviously, that they don't really want to tell their parents. Okay, so there's a sense of privacy there, and I think that contextual integrity notion fits pretty well with that. I think, Facebook, as I understand it, you sort of can establish contexts there by groups of people. The legal enforceability of any of that distribution is, highly open question, but it reinforces that kind of notion, I guess. One of the interesting things, actually, my class is going to have a debate on this next week, is the Europeans have instituted this thing called the right to be forgotten. I think there are a lot of things in Facebook that in 20 years people would like to have forgotten, probably.
20 years?
Well,
2 weeks later.
Well, I guess there are apps that are trying to provide that.
One quick comment. I think the real problem is that people do not fully appreciate that trust is not a transitive relation. You trust your friend, and your friend trusts somebody else, but that doesn't mean you trust the friend's friend. And we tend to operate on the assumption that trust is transitive, and it just isn't.
And computers, much more than we behave on that basis. So we have to watch out.
Any other questions?
Yeah, if I understood your thoughts correctly, the research aspects are more on the social side to make privacy successful, and then, what is unclear to me is what would be the solution. So obviously you're saying we need to understand these social aspects.
I think we do. I think there are technical things. I think this question about information flow and accountability in computer systems, those are technical questions.
Yeah, but how would they be enforced with laws? So the solution, or where you're the
Well,
future is going to.
in the end, probably enforcement is through the legal system. What the legal system needs is evidence, that can be defended in court. Right now, providing evidence that so-and-so actually attacked such and such a place, I think I should just is difficult. That's one of the well, we might as well get into it. One of the things that's come up in this question between Apple and the FBI now is people have said, well, can't the NSA get into these things? And the answer is, well, maybe they can, but they don't want to put their evidence in court. Okay. So it comes back to that. So I think as computer scientists, we need to be able to build mechanisms that provide accountability that will stand up. But the social aspect is also very important, and I think we need to have teams that include social science researchers along with computer scientists.
Yeah, I think the technical aspects need to work with the social aspects.
Yeah, I think their interaction is still fuzzy, right?
Yeah.
So
You have a very positive view of the FBI's action on the Apple thing. The FBI has never liked encryption, period. Go back to the Clipper chip proposal. Go back to the kiosk. They have been fighting a rearguard action. It is surprising that they didn't do immediately something after the Patriot Act passed. They waited until they had a case where they could make an argument to the public that sounds very agreeable and convincing, and to Apple's credit, they fought back.
Well, I think perhaps I have a slightly different perspective. I think I'm probably on the same side of this particular issue as you would be, but I do think we have an FBI for a reason, and they have to be able to do their job. Whether they need this particular thing to do their job, I think is debatable.
Comey admitted they screwed it up.
Well, we can get into the nuts and bolts, but I think the question is how likely is it presenting useful information on that phone? I think it's very likely. But and of course they've picked, if you were in their shoes and you wanted to make this case, you would pick a case that was as advantageous to you as possible. Apple has responded to the public, and they're trying to make they're obviously also appealing to the public as much as they can. In the end, the court will make a decision.
Any other questions? We have time for one or two more.
I would seek your comment on the consumer really have no negotiation power, as you mentioned. And even though you hold them accountable, the most common thing that I saw recently is whoever moves your privacy information out, they will offer you 1 year subscription for your credit monitoring. And then I actually got a letter, and then at the end, they dare to say, if you pay us $99, we'll upgrade you.
Yeah, right. They turn it into a sales opportunity. Yeah. Yes, of course. Yeah, well, that's an interesting question as to, you're referring really to sort of what I would guess is identity theft concern. You think about, your social security number is it's a confidential piece of data. Is it a private piece of data? No, I don't care what, it's just a number, okay? It's only the fact that somebody might be able to impersonate me with it. That's a concern. So we've got this funny definition of private information that doesn't really, it's based on a lot of different kinds of things. But I think individual consumers can have power. The power to go to court and sue people is very important. And that's actually, I think, perhaps you could speak to this in the EU. I think that you have standing. You don't actually have to show a harm is done.
You have the privacy directive, which is soon going to be superseded by something even more stringent. So, for instance, a typical example in the US, point of sales information is of course owned by the merchant, including your identity to the extent to which you reveal it. The European Union, that is not legal. So, in your case, you made the point that if it is out of context, well, I didn't want to say anything, but since you're opening it up now, if the merchant keeps that information and then swamps you with advertising, that would be within the context. Now, that is perfectly legal in the US. It is illegal in the European Union.
Yeah, that's a very good point, and actually one that I would be glad to elaborate on a little bit. That's one of the things I think needs to change in the future is that in the US, there are legal decisions that basically said, once you reveal something to a third party, then you've given up any privacy concern. Now it's regulated in certain by sector. So if you give it up to the medical records, someone who's involved in healthcare administration, even though they have the data, it's still constrained. Okay, if you the credit data is still constrained in some ways. One of the difficulties that's happening now is a lot of data that's really, well, suppose you go out to a private company and have your genome read. Okay, that's not medical data because it wasn't in the healthcare system, so it's not covered by HIPAA. Okay, you're relying on the whatever commercial practice, whatever privacy policy they publish for their data. So I really think in the end, what I hope will happen is that original court case that said once you give it up, you basically lost all control of it, is going to have to be modified. And have to set what's the effect of reasonable use.
Have the ability of
Anyway.
more complicated.
Yeah, I would be glad to see some, but I think it's going to be unfortunately difficult legally in the U.S. But it'd be interesting to see the contrast between what's going on between the two hemispheres like this.
I know you talk about specification and language, how to communicate to the users, kind of like risk analysis probably, the privacy risk. But the thing is, I think from the little I know, most users do not really understand the problem they were meeting, right? Like, okay, when people are like, a lot of people do not really care because, a site is like kind of taking their search results without their knowledge, something like that. But when you talk about money aspect, like people get much more, enthusiastic.
Yeah.
So, is there any way like we can, instead of quantifying the privacy risk, like kind of monetizing it? I'm not sure, like, even if I'm making sense here, but sort of like, okay, they should see it in a different perspective, just like, okay, I remember like, people, it was not a problem for a lot of people to go and swipe their credit card to, any kind of merchant and buy stuff, but after the Target incident, like, people are, I think to me, I've spoken to a lot of people, it's like, people are much more, like, on the alert now, that they know anything can happen because that's like, money is involved. So, can we look at like other, privacy stuff, maybe things we give to social network and all that stuff, and kind of monetize it, such that we can give the users like different perspective and how to understand it.
If you could, you might have a big effect. I mean,
Well, there is an easy answer, which is sort of an avoidance, basically. In the US, you have a federal law that limits your exposure on credit cards to $50 no matter what. Now, when it comes to debit cards, there is no limit, no federal limit. So, if you want to monetize it, as long as it was credit cards, $50, which most people say, who cares?
Yeah, that's true, but I mean, when we look at other privacy things that are, in reality, they're not like monetary, but, can we like monetize the risk? Something like that, like, such that we can give them like.
state the risk in terms of dollars.
Risk
Yes,
analysis is
in terms of
something
the
that
video,
people don't
probably,
understand.
they will feel the impact, but because like when you talk about people, when you talk
So
about-
would it help to go back to that more general definition of privacy? If you think about privacy as intrusion into your space, how much are you willing, I'm not, I think in a lot of cases that's very hard to monetize, people feel a sense of embarrassment. How do you put a price on that? They didn't,
Yeah.
maybe their identity wasn't stolen, but somebody installed a peephole in their bed,
I disagree.
You could sue and get money for that.
I disagree. Many of us have cards from a grocery store where we basically give up our privacy